call it the city that shouldn't exist. A 7-mile by 7-mile peninsula built on shifting sand, surrounded by bone-chilling water, and sitting directly on top of a ticking time bomb, the San Andreas Fault. For thousands of years, the world's greatest natural harbor was a ghost. Empires sailed right past its gates, blinded by the very fog that now defines it. But once the veil was lifted, San Francisco didn't just grow. It exploded. It is a city born of madness, built on gold, destroyed by fire, and reborn through the sheer audacity of the human spirit. From the silent villages of the Ohlone to the high-stakes laboratories of the AI revolution, this is a story of constant, restless reinvention. This is the entire history of San Francisco. Before the gold rush, before the cable cars and the sourdough bread, and the tech campuses and the traffic that hasn't moved since Tuesday, before any of it, there were the Ohlone. They had been here for 10,000 years. I want that number to actually land, because we tend to say things like 10,000 years and let them slide right past us. 10,000 years ago, the ancestors of the Ohlone were already standing on these hills, already naming what they saw, already building lives so deeply rooted to this specific piece of earth that no single word in their language meant wilderness, because the land was not wild to them. It was known. It was home. They spoke more than 50 distinct languages among themselves. Not dialects. Fully separate languages. The shell mounds they left behind, some of them 60 feet high, built up over thousands of years of living and eating and dying in one place, are still sitting underneath the East Bay right now. Beneath parking lots. Beneath shopping centers. We built on top of their world without really stopping to notice it was a world. That is the ground this city stands on. And I think it matters to say that at the beginning, so that when we talk about what came later, we understand what was already there first. In November of 1769, a Spanish military expedition led by a man named Gaspar de Portola crested a ridge south of the bay and stopped. They had been trying to find Monterey Bay. They had overshot it by 50 miles. What they saw instead was the largest natural harbor on the Pacific coast of North America. A bay so vast that, according to one soldier's journal, 10 of the world's great navies could anchor inside it without crowding each other. Portola was not pleased. He had missed his target, he was exhausted, his men were running low on supplies, and he had stumbled onto something that wasn't on his map. History, as it tends to do, took a different view. 7 years later, Spain established a settlement. On June 29, 1776, 5 days before Thomas Jefferson's words about life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness were read aloud for the first time in Philadelphia, a priest named Francisco Palou celebrated Mass in a reed hut on the edge of a small lake in the hills above the bay. Mission San Francisco de Assis. Named for the saint who gave away everything he owned, who talked to birds, who chose poverty and beauty over power and comfort. It is still standing. Mission Dolores. The oldest building in San Francisco. You can walk inside it today. It's smaller than you'd expect, and much quieter. For its first 60 years, the settlement at the bay was, to put it plainly, nowhere. The mission, a military garrison, some merchants, a harbor where ships stopped occasionally for water and hides. By 1845, the population sat below 1,000. It had a newspaper. It had a schoolhouse. It had a saloon. Because of course it had a saloon. It was a place that existed mainly because Spain, and then Mexico, after independence in 1821, needed to put something on the map to keep other empires from filling in the blank space. In the summer of 1846, the Mexican-American War brought the U.S. Navy into the bay. An officer named John Montgomery raised the American flag over the plaza, and just like that, without a single shot fired here, the settlement became American territory. In January 1847, it was officially renamed San Francisco. And then, for another year and a half, nothing happened. And then everything happened. January 24th, 1848. A carpenter named James Marshall is doing routine maintenance on a water channel at a sawmill in the Sierra Nevada foothills, about 120 miles northeast of San Francisco. The sawmill belongs to a man named John Sutter. The sun is not yet up. The morning is cold. Marshall looks down into the channel. He sees something. He reaches into the water and picks it up. It was gold. Marshall brought it to Sutter. Sutter tested it, heated it, weighed it, treated it with acid. It was real. The largest gold deposit ever discovered in North America was sitting in the hills above the bay. They tried to keep it quiet. They failed. A merchant named Sam Brannan was the first person to make sure the whole world heard. Before he ran through the streets of San Francisco, waving a vial of gold dust and shouting that it was real, Brannan had quietly done something important. He had bought every shovel, every pickaxe, every pan, and every piece of mining equipment he could get his hands on, and stocked his general store, the only one within 100 miles of the gold fields. Then he went public with the news. Sam Brannan made the equivalent of $36,000 in a single week after that announcement. He did not swing a single pickaxe. He understood, instinctively, what every entrepreneur since has had to learn. In a gold rush, the real money is usually in selling the shovels. The news reached the East Coast by August of 1848. It reached Europe and Asia by winter. And what followed was something that had never happened before in the recorded history of human migration. The world decided to move. They came from Chile and from China, from Australia and from Ireland, from France and from Germany and from Mexico and from Hawaii. They came because a stranger had found something in a river, and the story of it had circled the planet. And something in each of them heard that story and said, "Yes, that is for me. I will go." In January of 1848, San Francisco had around 800 residents. By December of 1849, it had 30,000. In 23 months, a forgotten harbor town grew by 36 times its original size. There were no city planners involved, no housing developments, just tents on the hills, wooden shacks built out over the water, and an overwhelming, irrational, magnificent human belief that something better was just over the next ridge. Most of them didn't find gold. The real fortunes were made in the city, selling eggs for 50 cents apiece, boots for $40, a single plank of lumber for more than a laborer earned back home in a week. A young German immigrant named Levi Strauss noticed that miners kept tearing through their trousers. He started making work pants out of canvas and denim, reinforced with copper rivets. You are probably wearing his invention right now, or you own a pair somewhere in your closet. The city burned 6 times between 1849 and 1851. 6 times they rebuilt it, faster each time. By the 1870s, San Francisco had something it had never had before: neighborhoods. Real neighborhoods, with churches and schools and butcher shops, and herbalists, and newspapers printed in languages that had never been written on this continent, before the gold rush brought the whole world to one harbor. The largest was Chinatown. The Chinese had come for gold. When the gold ran out, tens of thousands stayed, and more arrived to help build the Transcontinental Railroad. They hung from the granite cliffs of the Sierra Nevada in wicker baskets, drilling blasting holes by hand, earning $26 a month to do work that connected a continent. White workers doing the same job earned $35 and got room and board on top of it. When the railroad was complete in 1869, the workers were let go without ceremony. In 1882, Congress thanked them officially by passing the Chinese Exclusion Act, the first and only law in American history to bar immigration based entirely on race and national origin. Tens of thousands of families were separated. Men who had spent decades building California could not bring their wives and children to join them. The law stayed on the books for 61 years. The Second World War turned San Francisco into a military city in the space of an afternoon. More than 1 million soldiers and sailors passed through the Bay Area between 1941 and 1945. The shipyards in Richmond, just across the bay, launched a fully assembled cargo ship every 4 days at their peak. A 441-foot vessel, built faster than anyone had believed possible. Women who had never held a wrench became welders. Black workers who had been kept out of skilled trades for generations found the war had forced some of those doors open. The city was changing, slowly, unevenly, but it was changing. I think what he could see was the same thing every person who has ever truly loved this city could see in every era, through every disaster, through every version of failure and loss. He could see what it was going to be. Not what it was, not the rubble in front of him, what it was going to be. That is the thing about San Francisco that no earthquake and no fire and no economic collapse has ever managed to kill. The absolute stubborn, sometimes maddening conviction that the next version of this place will be better than the last. That something extraordinary is still possible here, that the story is not finished. Maybe that is a kind of madness. Or maybe it is the only sane response to being alive in a world that keeps burning things down. This has been the entire history of San Francisco.